charts up. And they had the charts that said if you're Jamaican, you come from this tribe, and if you're from Barbados, it's that tribe, and boom, 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 boom. And read the book, said, hey, come on, Pop. What is, you know that ain't right. He said, of course, Danny, I know that's not right. He said, but that's the hook. And he said, of course, Danny, I know that's not right. He said, but that's the hook. That's how we get them into place, and we wire them up to what's true. Well, you know, years later, after he passed away, and his sons and all of them, they either died or moved away, the Tanakh school began to teach those things as truth. This is the truth, you know. And, well, anyway, when we got cut loose by Chief Counsel, Princess Rivka, and my son.
Every other people. Y'all agreeing with me, it's with God, partner. I got you. So let me show you what God said about Ethiopia, though. Hey, read it. In the book of Jeremiah, verse 12. Ye Ethiopian. Ye what? Ye Ethiopian. Ye what? Ye Ethiopian. And also, ye shall be slain by my sword. Ye shall be what? Slain by my sword. I understand why you don't like the Bible.
The Sword of Judgment exposing hypocrisy in scriptural interpretation. The Bible is replete with stories of nations and peoples facing God's judgment, often in the form of the sword. However, it's striking to note how some individuals and groups selectively use these scriptures to demonize others, while ignoring the very same judgments pronounced upon their own ancestors. This article will delve into the scriptures that describe God's judgment on Judah, as well as the historical role of Rome in wielding the sword. By examining these examples, we'll expose the hypocrisy of those who cherry-pick scriptures to suit their narrative, while disregarding the complexities and nuances of biblical history. Judah and the sword. The Bible records numerous instances where Judah faced God's judgment, often in the form of military defeat and conquest. For example, Leviticus 26:33, and I will scatter you among the nations, and I will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Jeremiah 14:12. When they fast, I will not hear their cry, and when they offer burnt offering and an oblation, I will not accept them, but I will consume them by the sword, and by the famine and by the pestilence. Ezekiel 5:17. So will I send upon you famine and evil beasts, and they shall bereave you, and pestilence and blood shall pass through you. And I will bring the sword upon you. I, the Lord, have spoken it. These scriptures demonstrate that Judah, like other nations, faced God's judgment for their disobedience and idolatry. However, it's essential to acknowledge that these judgments were not unique to Judah, but rather part of a broader pattern of God's dealings with nations throughout history. Rome and the sword. Rome, as a historical empire, played a significant role in wielding the sword and exerting military power. The Roman Empire's military might was renowned, with advanced weapons like the gladius, spatha, and pilum. Rome's expansion was marked by conquests of various nations and territories, often using military force to assert dominance. However, it's crucial to recognize that Rome's actions, like those of other nations, were subject to God's judgment. The Bible warns that those who live by the sword will die by the sword, and that God will ultimately hold all nations accountable for their actions, exposing hypocrisy. By examining the scriptures and historical events surrounding Judah and Rome, we can expose the hypocrisy of those who selectively use scriptures to demonize others. It's essential to consider the full context and potential implications of any scripture or historical event, rather than cherry-picking verses to suit a particular narrative. Ultimately, the Bible teaches that all nations and peoples are subject to God's judgment, and that we must all acknowledge our own shortcomings and vulnerabilities. Rather than pointing fingers at others, we should strive to understand the complexities of biblical history.
Whitewash and stolen identity. Unpacking the biblical narrative of Ethiopia's chosen status. The nation of Ethiopia has a rich and fascinating history, with a deep spiritual heritage that spans thousands of years. In the Bible, Ethiopia is mentioned several times, often in a positive light. For example, in Psalm 87, 4-6, Ethiopia Cush is listed alongside other nations that will be blessed by God. This psalm emphasizes that God will bless and protect all nations, regardless of their background or ethnicity. As it says in verse 4, I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to those who know me. Behold, Philistia and Tyre, with Ethiopia. This one was born there. This verse highlights the inclusive nature of God's love and blessing.
If I was you, I wouldn't like the Bible either. It's not written for you. Right. God said the Ethiopians are going to be slain by his sword too. Right. Because you're an enemy of God's people. Yeah, right. Next.
And commandments, and warns against the dangers of idolatry and rebellion. As it says in verse 7, at that time tribute will be brought to the Lord of hosts from a people tall and smooth, from a people feared near and far, a nation mighty and conquering, whose land the rivers divide, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, to Mount Zion. This verse highlights the importance of worshiping and honoring God, and emphasizes the blessings that come from following his laws. The New Testament also mentions Ethiopia in a positive light. In Acts 8:26-40, we read the story of the Ethiopian eunuch who was baptized by Philip. This passage highlights the early connection between Ethiopia and Christianity, and emphasizes the importance of sharing the gospel with people from all nations and backgrounds. As it says in verse 31, and he said, how can I, unless someone guides me? And he asked Philip to come up and sit with him. This verse highlights the importance of discipleship and mentorship in the Christian life. In addition to these specific references to Ethiopia, the Bible also emphasizes the importance of following God's laws and commandments. In Deuteronomy 28:1-14, we read about the blessings that come from following God's commandments, including prosperity, health, and protection. As it says in verse 1, and if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth. This verse highlights the importance of obedience and faithfulness in the Christian life. Leviticus 18:5 also emphasizes the importance of following God's laws, saying, you shall therefore keep my statutes and my rules. If a person does them, he shall live by them. I am the Lord. This verse highlights the importance of living a life that is pleasing to God, and emphasizes the blessings that come from following his laws.